Episode 9, The Unwritten Code. The sanctuary was thriving, but its success brought tension. With more people arriving daily, new disputes emerged over leadership, resources, and the rules that governed their fragile community. Cowlip's voice still carried weight, but cracks were forming. Malcolm, Elias, and others began to openly question whether the sanctuary could survive on Cowlip's principles of truth and transformation without stricter guidelines. Elias, especially, had grown vocal. If we don't establish clear rules, we'll collapse, he said during one meeting. You can't run a community on vague ideals. People need structure, boundaries, accountability. Caleb stood by the fire, silent for a moment as the group murmured in agreement. Rules are just another system, he said finally, and systems are what brought us here. They start with good intentions, but they always end the same way: control. Malcolm folded his arms. So, what then? We just trust people to do the right thing? That's naive, Caleb. No, Caleb replied. It's dangerous, but the truth isn't safe, and it doesn't need our rules. It's bigger than that. The next morning, Caleb was walking by the edge of the river with Arav and Zach when a small group of people approached them. One of them, a woman named Nadia, looked anxious. She carried a bundle of wild herbs in her arms, the roots still damp with earth. We found these in the forest, Nadia said. There's barely anything left in the stores and people are hungry. We thought this might help. Caleb studied the herbs, then nodded. You did the right thing. People need to eat. Did they? Elias's voice rang out as he stepped into the clearing, flanked by two others. He pointed at the bundle. That's a restricted zone. We agreed. No one would forage there because of the risk of Vesla patrols. Nadia looked down, shame flickering across her face. I'm sorry, she murmured. We were careful. We didn't see any drones. That's not the point, Elias snapped. The point is, they broke the rules, and if we'd let it slide, what's next? Chaos. It's not chaos to feed the hungry, Caleb said evenly. Elias glared at him. This is exactly what I mean. You undermine every attempt we make to bring order to this place. If we don't hold people accountable, the sanctuary will fall apart. Caleb stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Order without humanity is just another prison. The point of this sanctuary isn't to survive like Vesla. It's to live differently, to live free. And freedom means breaking rules whenever it suits you, Elias shot back. No, Caleb said. Freedom means living in truth, not fear. The argument simmered, but Nadia and her group were allowed to distribute the herbs. That evening, as the sanctuary gathered by the fire, Caleb addressed them. I've heard a lot of talk about rules, he said, about how they keep us safe, keep us organized, and it's true, they can. But rules without understanding, without humanity, become cages. They don't protect us. They trap us. He looked around the crowd, his gaze steady. Gabrielle is built on rules, algorithms, calculations. And where did that lead? To a system that controls every part of our lives, that tells us who we are and what we're worth. That's not what we're building here. If you want safety, go back to the system. But if you want freedom, you have to live with the risk that comes with it. As the sanctuary debated Caleb's words, the tension reached new heights. Elias and his followers began organizing their own meetings, arguing for stricter guidelines and formal leadership. Malcolm wavered, torn between his pragmatism and his lingering respect for Caleb's vision. Zach, meanwhile, found himself drawn closer to Caleb, watching the man wrestle with the burden of leading a community that was increasingly divided. One afternoon, as Caleb and Zach sat by the river, Zach broke the silence. Do you ever wonder if they're right, if we do need rules? Caleb skipped a stone across the water. Rules are easy, Zach. They make people feel safe, like they've got everything figured out. But safety isn't freedom, and rules can't save us. What can? Caleb's gaze shifted to John, who was playing a few feet away with a group of children. Live in the truth, he said softly. Not just talking about it, not just enforcing it, living it. Even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. A few days later, a Vestla drone passed low over the sanctuary. The sight of its cold, unblinking eye sent a wave of panic through the camp. People scattered, hiding in tents and shadows, the fear palpable. Caleb, however, stood in the open, his posture calm as the drone swept overhead. When it passed, he turned to the others. Fear is the system's greatest weapon, he said. It doesn't just watch you, it makes you watch yourself. It makes you small, makes you doubt what you know is true. But you are more than the system's rules, more than its algorithms. And as long as you believe that, it can't own you. That night, Caleb called another meeting by the fire. We can't let fear guide us, he said, his voice carrying through the flickering light. And we can't let the need for control turn us into the very thing we're running from. Rules, fear, systems, they all serve the same purpose, to keep us from facing the truth. But the truth is here, and it's calling us to something greater. Elias stood, his expression hard. And what is that truth, Caleb? Because all I see are words. Words won't keep us fed. Words won't protect us when Vestla comes. You're right, Caleb said. Words alone won't save us, but living in the truth will. If we lose sight of that, if we let fear and rules take over, we've already lost. The sanctuary remained divided, but Zach noticed a shift in some of the newer arrivals. They seemed drawn to Caleb's quiet certainty, his refusal to compromise on what he called living in truth. Even Elias, though he continued to argue, appeared unsettled, his cynicism cracking under the weight of Caleb's conviction. One evening, Zach watched as John toddled over to Elias, offering him a flower he'd picked from the edge of the camp. Elias hesitated, his face softening for just a moment as he accepted the small gift. It wasn't much, but it was something. And as the fire crackled in the cold night air, Zach followed the truth Caleb spoke of, quiet, steady, and alive, moving among them, shaping their fragile community into something new.